This happened a few weeks ago. I'm 32 and recently moved to a new city. I've always liked late-night walks to clear my mind after a long day of work as an IT consultant. The streets here felt different, lonely. The dimly lit shops and old brick buildings made the night feel thick. I thought walking would help me feel more at home. I was wrong. On the first night, I was lost in thought. I heard footsteps behind me. I turned around quickly but saw nothing, just streetlights flickering. I shrugged it off and kept walking, convincing myself it was a jogger or a trick of my mind. The next night, I felt watched. I kept my pace steady but couldn't ignore the fear creeping in. Then I heard it again. The footsteps slow and deliberate. I turned a little, catching a glimpse of someone in a dark hoodie. My heart raced. When I looked fully, nothing. It had to be my imagination, I told myself. By the third night, I was on edge. I glanced at the stores as I walked, hoping something would distract me. One window caught my eye. It took a moment to realize it was my own reflection. But off to the side, I saw something else. A face, pale and unsettling. As I stepped closer, it vanished. Just my startled face remained. I froze, my heart pounding. I hurried away, looking over my shoulder, but the street was empty. After that, I left the lights on in my apartment at night. I wanted to feel safe. But the feeling didn't go away. I couldn't shake the thought that someone was watching me. Maybe it was just paranoia. I felt silly for thinking that someone had even taken interest in me. Then came the night I turned down a narrow street, away from the main road. I heard the footsteps again. My heart dropped. I took a deep breath and dared to look back. The night felt thicker. I was sure someone trailed behind me. My instincts screamed at me to run. Suddenly I heard a whisper. It was too close, but I couldn't catch the words. I felt chills creep through me. I turned around, but nobody was there. I stood frozen. The streetlights felt far away. Maybe it was just my mind playing tricks. I tried to convince myself as I walked on. I didn't know what else to do. But the nagging feeling wouldn't leave. Someone was behind me. I quickened my pace, counting my steps. I was scared. Finally, I reached my apartment building. I dashed inside and locked the door behind me. My heart was still racing. I leaned against the door, trying to catch my breath. I wondered if I was just being foolish. But deep down, I felt it. Someone had been there. Someone was still watching. I didn't know what to think anymore. I just stood there, collecting my thoughts in the dark. The next evening, I decided to take a different route. I thought maybe a change of scenery would help. I needed to clear my head and stop feeling like a paranoid mess. The streets were quieter, and the familiar sounds started to fade. I almost felt safe again. But as I turned onto a side street, the unease crept back. I couldn't help but feel like I was being watched. I picked up my pace, trying to shake the feeling. That was when I heard it. The footsteps, soft at first, then growing louder as I walked. My stomach dropped, and I glanced over my shoulder. Just darkness. I continued on. Each step felt heavier. I knew I should be rational, but my instincts screamed otherwise. I took a turn and walked past a small park. The moon cast long shadows on the grass. That's when I noticed something on the ground. A shoe. Not just any shoe, a black sneaker with scuffed edges, abandoned and worn. I hesitated. How had I not seen this before? I stepped closer, a knot forming in my throat. It felt like a clue, an indication that someone had once stood right here. I scanned the park again, expecting to see someone lurking nearby. But the benches were empty and the trees swayed gently in the breeze. I kicked the shoe lightly. It rolled slightly before stopping. Where was the owner? Panic bubbled in my chest. I couldn't linger. I turned on my heel and quickened my pace again. The footsteps resumed, echoing my fear. They were there, relentless and closer. I could almost feel a presence breathing down my neck. When I finally arrived at the main road, I glanced behind me one last time. I caught a glimpse of the hoodie, A familiar dark figure standing at the edge of the park, motionless. My heart raced. I didn't stop to think. I sprinted back to my apartment, desperate to escape whatever was behind me. Once inside, I slammed the door shut and locked it, the sound echoing in the hollow space of my apartment. I pressed my back against the door, breathless. Panic set in, and I fought to regain control. But I had seen it, the figure in the dark, waiting. I ran to the window, peeking through the curtains. I had to know if it was still there. The street was empty, eerily quiet. But something nagged at me. I couldn't shake off the feeling that this was just the beginning. That's when I noticed something glinting on my desk. It was my phone, illuminated. A notification popped up, an email, from someone I didn't recognize. Subject line, "You're not alone." My heart sank, and dread washed over me. Someone knew I was scared, and they were watching. I sat in the dark, staring at my phone screen. The email felt like a taunt. I couldn't ignore it. I opened the message, my hands trembling. "Meet me at the old playground at midnight. You need to know the truth." The truth. My mind raced. Who was this person? Why did they want to meet me? The playground was just a block over from my apartment, a place where kids played during the day, but in the dead of night it felt different, haunted even. I didn't want to go. The idea of stepping outside again sent shivers down my spine, but the urgency of the message pulled at me. I needed answers. Was the figure from the park connected? Was I in danger? I paced my small living room, weighing my options. I could call the police, but what would I say? I had no concrete proof of anything, just shadows and a shoe. I took a deep breath and grabbed my jacket. I was already on edge, so I figured I might as well find out what was going on. I pocketed my phone and stepped outside. The chill of the night air hit me hard. The streets were silent, the only sound being my footsteps as I made my way toward the playground. I checked behind me, half expecting to see the figure again. The playground loomed ahead, dark and empty. I hesitated at the entrance, the creaking swing adding to my unease. As I stepped inside, I felt a sense of foreboding. I called out, "Hello?" My voice echoed back empty. Then I heard it. The familiar soft footsteps behind me again. My heart raced, blood pounding in my ears. I spun around, but there was nothing. Just the wind rustling through the swings. I shook my head, trying to focus. "This is ridiculous," I whispered to myself. I was not the kind of person to let fear control me. But deep down, I knew something sinister was at play. Suddenly, a rustling sound came from the bushes nearby. I tensed, blood running cold. "Who's there?" I shouted. No answer. Just the night enveloping me in its stillness. I glanced at my phone to check the time. I had about 10 minutes until midnight. Then, from the corner of my eye, I saw a flash of movement. I turned sharply. Someone was watching me from the shadows, their expression hidden. I felt a surge of adrenaline. I ran to the nearest slide for cover, my breath coming quick and shallow. "Show yourself," I called, trying to sound braver than I felt. In the moonlight, I glimpsed the outline of a figure, a hooded silhouette, just like before. My instincts kicked in, and I started to back away slowly, my heart pounding. Then everything went dark. A sudden thud sounded just behind me, and I spun around. The night swallowed the playground in silence, leaving me breathing heavily, frozen in fear. I wanted to run, but my feet wouldn't move. Who were they? What did they want? I could feel the weight of their presence, lingering, waiting just beyond my sight. And then I heard it, a soft whisper cutting through the darkness. "You're not alone." My heart raced as the whisper echoed in my ears. I pressed my back against the cold metal of the slide, straining to make sense of the darkness around me. Was this some kind of joke, or something worse? "Who's there?" I managed to call out again, my voice shaky. Silence answered me. I strained my ears, the sounds of the night suddenly deafening. Each rustle of leaves felt like an accusation. Then out of nowhere, I heard a clear voice, low but distinct. "You shouldn't have come here." I froze. My world narrowed down to that sound. It didn't come from the bush. It was right in front of me. I squinted into the gloom, seeking the source. "What do you mean?" I replied, my courage hanging by a thread. The silhouette moved closer, shifting slowly. The moonlight caught a glint of something, a flash of silver, maybe a knife. Panic surged through me and I pushed off the slide, ready to bolt. But before I could make my escape, the figure stepped forward into the faint light. It was a girl. Her hood was pulled low, but I could see her face pale and gaunt, like she hadn't seen light in days. "You have to listen to me," she said urgently, her eyes wide with fear. "They're after you." "Who's after me?" The tremor in my voice betrayed my composure. I stepped back instinctively, the playground fading behind me in a haze of terror. "Just follow me," she urged, her tone a mix of desperation and resolve. "You'll never be safe here. We need to get out while we still can." "Wait," I shouted, confusion swirling in my mind. "What do you know? Why should I trust you?" "Because I'm the only one who can help you," she said, glancing over her shoulder as if expecting someone to emerge from the shadows. "The playground, it's a trap." A chill ran down my spine. The ominous feeling I had crept back in, stronger now. "I don't understand," I stammered, glancing around nervously. "Why would they be after me? I didn't do anything." Her gaze hardened. "It doesn't matter. They know you saw something. They will come for you if you stay here." Before I could respond, the bushes rattled violently. My breath caught as I spotted a shadow moving swiftly, angling towards us. The girl's eyes widened. "Run!" she yelled, her urgency snapping me into action. I didn't hesitate this time. We sprinted toward the exit of the playground, the sound of our footsteps thundering against the ground. My mind raced, trying to process everything. Did she really know something? How was I supposed to trust her? Just as we reached the edge, a figure surged from the darkness, blocking our path. My stomach dropped as fear surged, but before I could scream, the girl pulled me to the side, dragging me toward an alleyway. "Keep quiet," she hissed, and I nodded, unable to form words. We ducked behind a dumpster, my heart pounding in my ears. I strained to see what was happening, and that's when I saw it. The hooded figure from before was back, searching the playground, eyes scanning every corner. They were looking for me. I felt trapped. I needed to know what this girl knew, but I couldn't shake the feeling that danger was closing in. "Tell me everything," I whispered urgently, barely able to breathe. That's when I heard a second voice, chillingly familiar. "She's close. She has to be here somewhere." I pressed my back against the cold metal dumpster, my heart racing as I listened to the faint sound of footsteps drawing closer. The alley was dark, the only light coming from a flickering street lamp a few blocks away. It created strange shadows that danced along the walls, heightening my anxiety. "Who are they?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. I could see the girl beside me, her face etched with fear. Her eyes darted between the alley entrance and the darkness surrounding us. "They are part of something much bigger," she replied, her voice steady, but I could hear the tremor beneath it. "They watch everyone. They know more than you think." My mind was spinning. "But why me? I don't know anything." "You saw what happened to him," she said, swallowing hard. "The boy at the park. They're here to make sure you don't say anything." A jolt of realization hit me. I had seen something that didn't seem right. A scuffle. The way those men had moved just outside the playground. But I hadn't thought it could come back like this. I felt sick. Suddenly the girl put a hand on my arm, her grip fierce. "I need you to focus. We can't stay here. They'll find us." To prove her point, the hooded figure turned, the faint light reflecting off something metallic in his hand. A small flashlight, illuminating the area around him. "She must be here," he growled. sounding more frustrated than determined. My heart thudded in my chest. I had no idea what kind of trouble I was in. "What should we do?" I asked, panic creeping into my voice. "Follow me," she urged again, her tone desperate. In one fluid motion, she pulled me out from behind the dumpster and into the shadows of the alley. We ran quietly, our feet barely making a sound against the cracked pavement. Just as we turned a corner, a piercing light swept through the alley, catching us in its beam. "Stop," came a voice from behind. Heavy boots echoed against the ground, and I felt the spike of fear as we sprinted deeper into the labyrinth of alleys. "Keep going," the girl shouted, her intensity pushing me forward. I didn't look back, but I could feel the weight of their presence closing in on us. We burst out of the alley and into the street, where the streetlights offered safety in numbers. But as we ran, I realized something. This wasn't just about me anymore. There was a much larger game at play, and I was caught in the middle of it. We dodged into another narrow street, the girl glancing back nervously. "We need to find a place to hide for a moment," she said, panting. "They'll be searching the area." As we hurried towards an unmarked door wedged between two buildings, I noticed something strange. A flickering sign above us that read, "Open." I turned to the girl, fear swirling around us like a fog. "What's behind that door?" She hesitated, eyes wide. "I don't know if it's safe, but it could be our only chance." That's when the hairs on my neck stood up. A figure emerged from the alley, moving towards us with unsettling calm. I could see his face now, familiar and terrifying. "You can't run forever," he called out, his voice echoing down the street. We stood frozen, breaths shallow as the reality of our situation slammed into me. He knew who I was. He knew where I was. There was no more running. Without thinking, I grabbed the handle of the door just as the figure stepped into the light. As I pulled it open, I braced myself for whatever came next. As the door creaked open, a rush of stale air hit my face, sending a chill down my spine. The darkness inside seemed to swallow us whole. I glanced at the girl beside me. Her expression was a mix of determination and fear. "Go," she urged, pushing me through the threshold. I stumbled into the dimly lit room. It smelled of dust and something else, something metallic. Panic threatened to claw its way back up my throat. I didn't know what was behind that door, but staying outside felt even worse. We quickly moved further inside, and she pulled the door shut behind us with a soft thud. The echo faded away, but the tension didn't. "We need to be quiet," she whispered, her voice barely above a breath. I couldn't see much, but I felt the walls nearby, searching for a switch or some kind of light. My hands brushed against something cold and flat, and I flicked a switch. A dim bulb flickered to life, illuminating the space. The room was small and cluttered, filled with boxes stacked haphazardly and old furniture shrouded in sheets. I felt trapped, like a rabbit in a corner. "What are we doing here?" I asked, my voice trembling with confusion. "I don't know," she admitted, chewing her lip nervously. "But it's better than out there, at least for now." Just when I thought we might have bought ourselves some time, I heard footsteps again. They weren't distant this time. They were close, and they were coming for us. I could hear them pacing outside the door, heavy boots echoing against the concrete. "They're already searching," the girl breathed, wide-eyed. "What if they find us?" My heart raced at the thought. What did they want? This was spiraling out of control. "Stay quiet," she said, moving closer to me. "They might not look inside if they think we slipped away." I felt a sudden urge to bolt for the door, but I knew that wouldn't do us any good. I couldn't leave her. Just then, a voice emerged from the corridor outside. "You think they went in here?" it growled. I felt sick. They'd heard us. I glanced around for an escape route. There was a window, but it was too high for us to reach. "What do we do?" I whispered, my back against the wall. That's when I noticed something shiny in the corner of the room. I moved toward it, trying to focus my attention on anything other than the growing noise outside. It was a metal pipe. I picked it up, feeling its weight in my hands. At least it was something. "Whatever happens, we'll fight," I said, looking at the girl. She nodded, determination washing over her previously frightened features. But in that moment I heard the door rattle, a hand gripping the handle from the other side. My heart dropped. "They're coming in." We braced ourselves, adrenaline spiking. Just as the handle began to turn, I prepared for whatever was about to happen next. Would this finally be the moment it all came to a head? I could only hope we were ready. The door swung open with a loud creak and my heart raced. Two shadows stood silhouetted in the doorway, their faces obscured by the dim light from outside. They stepped in, scanning the room. I pressed myself against the wall, my grip tightening around the metal pipe. "Check everywhere," one of them said, his voice low and rough. I could feel my pulse thumping in my ears. They were looking for us. I exchanged a frantic glance with the girl. "We need a plan," I whispered urgently. She shook her head slightly, her breathing shallow. The footsteps were heavy as they moved deeper into the room. They kicked over boxes and pushed aside furniture. I could see their faces now, hardened, eyes scanning for any sign of movement. These weren't just ordinary pursuers, they were determined and dangerous. "Damn it, they can't have gone far," the second one muttered. They were right behind us. I felt a surge of dread. They were close, too close. I took a slow step back, hoping to find any corner to hide in. Just then, I noticed a narrow gap between two large boxes against the wall. It was a risk, but it was better than being caught. "Follow my lead," I mouthed to the girl, and she nodded, her eyes wide with fear. We edged toward the boxes, but the rustling of paper turned the attention of one of the men. "Hey, did you hear that?" he shouted, and I froze. I could feel my stomach drop. Not now, I thought, but my instincts kicked in. I glanced back at the door. We were losing our chance. We dove behind the boxes just as one of them stepped closer. The fear of being discovered consumed me. "Stay quiet," I whispered, but I could hardly control my own voice. As I held my breath, I could hear them coming nearer, rummaging through old crates. My mind raced, thinking of ways to escape if they found us. That's when I saw it, a loose board on the floor just in front of me, slightly raised. If I could just get it open, maybe there was something beneath. "Help me," I whispered to the girl, my eyes darting to the board. She looked hesitant but nodded, understanding my unspoken solution. We shifted quietly, careful not to make the slightest sound. Just as we started prying it up, a loud crash echoed in the room. One of the men had knocked over a pile of chairs, and it sounded as if they were losing patience. "This place is a dead end. They've got to be here somewhere." My heart sank. We had to act fast. "Now," I hissed, and we pulled up the board just enough to slip underneath. I squeezed in first, feeling the rust and grit against my arms. The girl followed, her eyes wide with panic, but filled with resolve. We crawled into the darkness below, praying it wasn't a trap. The air felt stifled, and I could barely hear anything outside. Then I heard the door slam shut, followed by the sound of heavy footsteps pacing again. They were thorough. Just when I thought we might be safe, a faint light began to shine through a crack in the boards above us. Someone was shining a flashlight. "They've got to be close," one of them yelled, and I felt another wave of panic wash over me. What if they found us? What if this wasn't the way out? I dared a glance up at the small gap. I could see a boot stomp near the edge, a sign they were getting desperate. "Think they went down here?" the other voice asked, tone filled with contempt. The flashlight beam swept across the room and directly above us. In that moment I realized two things. We were running out of time, and staying quiet wasn't going to save us. I just hoped whatever was next wouldn't be our end. The darkness enveloped us, a thick blanket that suffocated all sound from the world above. My heart raced, not just from fear, but from the uncertainty of what lay ahead. I felt the girl's presence beside me, her breath quick and shaky, echoing my own anxiety. "What if they find us?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Shh," I urged, keeping my eyes fixed on the small gap above. My instincts shouted to find a way out, but that was easier said than done. The board had only opened slightly, and I could feel the hard floor beneath us pressing into my back. Time stretched, each second feeling like an eternity. Then came a sudden crash, a sound that set my skin crawling. The men were kicking things around again, frustrated. "We'll check under the floorboards next. They can't hide forever." One of them sounded closer now, anger in his voice. My mind began to turn over options quickly. We had to get out and fast. "Can you fit through the gap?" I asked the girl, peering into the darkness around us. She looked thin enough, but the thought of sending her alone made my stomach twist. I can try, but what if they're waiting?" "We'll wait for the light to move and then you go," I decided, my voice firming with resolve. I had to make a decision. "If they find me, you run. Just don't look back." Her eyes widened in fear, but I saw a flicker of determination. "Okay," she said, still trembling but now ready. I held my breath, straining to catch any sound. The flashlight beam shifted back and forth above us, illuminating a piece of the wall behind the boxes just out of reach. There was a flicker of hope in my mind. If we could get to that wall, it might lead to another escape route. "Wait for it," I whispered, eyes glued to the light. Just then, the beam suddenly swung away from us. My heart leapt. "Now!" I hissed, and she pushed herself toward the opening, squeezing through. I could barely see her silhouette, but felt the urgency of the moment. "Go, go, go!" I urged, my frustration bubbling. I crawled behind her, feeling cramped and terrified. But then the light swung back, hitting us with its harsh glow. "Hey, I see something!" one of the men shouted, and my stomach dropped. I scrambled faster, desperate now. Just as I felt the girl's hand on my arm, tugging me toward the opening, I saw the light shine directly onto the hole. Then, everything went dark. The board slipped from my grip, sealing us in. Panic surged as I realized we had been trapped. I pushed against the darkness, feeling the girl's hand still in mine. "We have to keep moving," I whispered, trying to sound calm. "Where?" she replied, her voice shaking again. "I don't know, but we have to find a way out. We can't stay here." Just as I wrapped my mind around the next move, I heard something, footsteps approaching the boards we just crawled under. The unmistakable sound of someone crouching near our escape. The voices were muffled, but I understood the implications. They weren't just searching anymore. They were aware of where we were. My pulse quickened. This was it. There was no going back now. I clenched my fists, steeling myself for what came next. "Get ready," I said softly. "We need to fight to get out." I held my breath, feeling the weight of the darkness around us, and closed my eyes, listening intently. The men above were whispering now, and I could catch fragments of their conversation. "Stay close to the floor. If they're down there, they won't be able to hold their breath," one of them said, his voice gritty and rough. My mind raced. They knew we were in here. I scanned our tiny hideout for something, anything that could help us. When my fingers brushed against a jagged piece of wood, I gripped it tightly, feeling its weight in my palm. "They have to be scared," the other man chimed in, with disbelief edging his tone. "This place is huge. They won't last long." "Let's make sure that they don't get out," the first man growled, and I felt a chill run down my spine. We had no time left. I squeezed the girl's hand. "We need to go now," I whispered urgently. "If we wait, they'll come for us." With the flicker of hope and the fear gripping at my chest, I started inching backward, using the small space around us. "Follow me closely. Don't make a sound," I instructed, hoping she remembered my earlier words. As I crawled, the dim light from above flickered through the cracks, dancing ominously on the walls. I could feel the girl's body pressed next to mine, her breath soft but steady despite the panic. Suddenly, I heard a loud creak above as one of the men shifted something heavy, a momentary distraction in their search. "Check the walls. They could have gone that way." His voice boomed, and the floor beneath us felt like it was trembling. "Almost there," I urged, finally reaching the edge of our little hiding place. I could see a shadow stretching across the floorboards just ahead. My pulse raced with both fear and adrenaline. In a swift motion, I slid out from beneath the boards, pulling the girl along with me. The sudden rush of fresh air filled my lungs. We were free from the cramped space, but now we had to move fast. "Which way?" the girl whispered, looking frantic. "Right." I pointed instinctively toward a small door I remembered seeing before. My eyes darted to the entrance, just as I heard footsteps thumping above, a warning that we had to hurry. As we sprinted toward the door, something caught my eye. An old coat hung from a hook on the wall. Instinctively, I grabbed it, shoving it over my shoulders to disguise us. It hung large and heavy, but it would have to do. "Stay close," I urged again, and we rushed toward the door. But just as we reached for the knob, I heard a deep, rumbling voice call out from above, "They're gone. We've lost them." My heart sank. They were regrouping. "Run!" I shouted, flinging the door open. Outside, the night air hit us like a splash of cold water. We stumbled out into the moonlight, the darkness behind us a tangled maze of shadows. I glanced back and froze. There, in the light of the moon, stood the silhouettes of two men, their expressions hidden but the menace clear. I could barely breathe as I pulled the girl close, my heart hammering as they stepped towards us. "We'll never let you go," one of them snarled. That's when I saw it. The glimpse of something glimmering on the ground beside us. A glint of metal that might just give us an advantage, but I needed to act fast. "Get ready," I whispered to the girl, fear tightening my chest. "This isn't over." The cold metal felt heavy in my hand as I crouched low, ready for whatever confrontation awaited us. I glanced at the girl beside me. Her wide eyes reflected a mix of fear and determination, mirroring my own internal storm. The men advanced, their silhouettes stretching as the moonlight spilled over the pavement, illuminating the threat. "Stay behind me," I whispered, clenching my jaw against the rising tide of panic. The glint of the metal was a small comfort in the face of what we were up against. As the figures approached, I took a step forward. "You need to back off," I shouted, attempting to sound confident, though my voice trembled. They stopped, taken aback by my unexpected defiance. "And what are you going to do with that?" one taunted, revealing the gleam of a knife hanging from his belt. It was a small moment of hesitation, but enough to give us the edge needed to seize our chance. The girl shifted beside me, and in that quick moment of unspoken understanding, we made a break for it. I lunged toward the alley, dragging her behind me as I sprinted into the shadows. The footsteps echoed behind us, determined and relentless. I could hear their curses rising with the cadence of their hurried movements. We turned at a corner, breathless, hearts pounding in our chests. "Left!" I shouted, and we veered into a narrower street, knees hitting the pavement hard. As we ran, I couldn't shake the feeling that they would catch us, that it was only a matter of time. But for now, we had the advantage of surprise. Reaching a side street, I spotted the faint outline of a door half concealed by overgrown shrubbery. "In there," I urged, shoving her ahead and yanking the door open just wide enough for us to slip through. It creaked as we entered, a sound that sent a shiver down my spine. The dark interior swallowed us, and the instant we were inside, I turned to lock it behind us. "Where are we?" she panted, scanning the dimly lit interior. I had no idea, but it felt abandoned, stripped of life. Only more shadows and the faint scent of mildew greeted us. "I don't know. Just somewhere they can't find us," I whispered, the metal still clutched tightly in my palm. I tried to catch my breath, listening intently as I caught the faint sound of their voices growing distant, at least for now. We huddled in place, desperation and the unshakable fear of being discovered thickening the air around us. "What did they want?" I finally asked, turning to her with urgency. "What do you know?" "The playground isn't just a place," she replied, her voice barely a whisper. "It's a hub for them. They draw people in, use them somehow. I thought they might have been watching me before. I thought I was safe." Her words sounded like restless whispers of memories buzzing around in my head. I had come here for solace, thinking I could find some peace in the nighttime air. Instead, I'd stumbled into a trap, and now I was embroiled in whatever darkness clung to this place and these people. Suddenly, a heavy thud echoed through the doorway, followed by the sound of footsteps, loud and deliberate. "They can't have gone far," one voice growled, sending chills racing down my spine. They were closer now. "Crouch down," I hissed, pulling her close as we tucked ourselves behind old crates stacked against the wall. My heart raced, partly from the panic, partly from indignation. "What do we do now?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "We wait? We need to find a way out, one they won't expect." The pounding footsteps were now so near I could almost feel the vibrations in my bones. I could see their shadows creeping closer to the doorway, scanning for any sign of life. Anxiety twisted in my gut when I noticed a small window nearby, too narrow for me to fit through alone, but we had to try. "They'll find us here," she whispered desperately, her eyes wide in fear. It was clear that this had become a game of survival, a deadly dance through darkness, where we were mere players. I thought quickly, feeling the edges of every corner as I removed a box from the window's frame. "On my count," I said, inching closer to the dim light. "Wait," she whispered in hesitation, but there was no time to second guess. "Now!" I urged, sliding toward the window as she pressed against the back wall, holding her breath. I climbed up, managing to grasp the ledge and pulling myself through the small space. The cold air hit me, holding a sliver of freedom. I turned, reaching down to assist her. "Come on, quick!" I urged, extending my hand as she clambered up, eyes wide with fear of being caught. Just as she reached for my grasp, the door swung open, and I could see the men pouring in from the darkness. "Don't look back," I yelled, and she pushed through the window, landing outside just as the light flooded into the cramped room. We both hit the ground hard, but barely absorbed the pain as we scrambled to our feet. With adrenaline surging in our veins, we dashed away, the night swallowing us whole, leaving the darkness just behind us. I stole a glance back as we turned a corner, sensing they were still coming. The long shadows trailing behind us promised a reckoning. "What do we do now?" the girl asked, breathlessly as we ran. I could see her fear reflected in my own, but with each step we took, every corner we turned, something deep inside clawed to reclaim an ounce of hope. "I don't know," I replied, feeling the weight of unshakable tension pressing on my chest. "But we can't stop." As we plunged further into the night, questions tumbled in my mind like loose stones, a cacophony of uncertainty and dread. I wished I had answers. I wished this was all just a terrible nightmare. But their faces, their watchful eyes, haunted the edges of my memory, and I knew the truth remained just out of reach, unsolved, wrapped in the darkness that chased us down. And somewhere beneath it all, part of me understood we would never truly escape.